Thank you for joining us here in breakout room number 4 for a very important conversation. Enjoy it, engage, tune in, and don't forget, afterwards, go back to the main room as we continue the state of Latino America.
Hello, and welcome back to LULAC's State of Latino America. My name is Alejandro Roark, and I am the Executive Director for Hispanic Technology and Telecommunications Partnership. HTTP is a CEO roundtable of national Latino civil rights organizations, including our friends at LULAC, who work in partnership to promote access, adoption, and the full utilization of technology and telecommunications resources by the Latino community across the United States. Before we begin today, I want to invite everybody that's tuning in to join the conversation on social media by using the hashtag State of Latino America. That's hashtag State of Latino America. The COVID-19 global health crisis really has proven to be a perfect case study for what could go wrong and what has gone wrong, and expose the depths of the digital divide and other structural inequalities impacting Latino communities. What is clear today more than ever is that having broadband access is linked to our health, our well-being, and our economic security. And this is especially true for Black, Latino, and Indigenous communities of color, as well as rural and low-income families who are experiencing economic hardship because of the coronavirus and who might face compounding obstacles to establishing and sustaining a reliable at-home broadband connection. Our conversation today centers the experiences of the Latino community and explores how the lack of an at-home broadband connection is compounding pre-existing structural vulnerabilities, expanding digital inequality, and widening the racial achievement gap as schools move to both in-person and remote learning. I'm joined today by digital inclusion advocates from civil society and representatives from some of the country's largest telecommunications carriers, including Laura Berrocal, Vice President and Policy for Charter Communications, Jessica Gonzalez, Co-CEO of Free Press, Jackie Puente, Executive Director for External Affairs at Comcast, and Joanna Soffer, who is the Senior Manager at T-Mobile Government Affairs. Thank you all for being here with us today. Today, having access to the internet allows students to learn, gives parents the option to pursue remote employment opportunities, and also allows us to come together to discuss important topics from the comfort of our homes. I want to start today's conversation by welcoming Jessica Gonzalez. Jessica is an attorney and racial justice advocate and co-CEO of Free Press, with the mission of building media and technology that serve truth and justice. So Jessica, for those tuning in that might be new to this conversation, do you mind sharing with us some deeper context about the Latino digital divide and your work at Free Press?
Sure, happy to. Thanks, Alejandro, and thank you to LULAC for having me here today. It's good to be in community. As Alejandro mentioned, I'm the co-CEO of Free Press. We're working to ensure that the people's voice is heard in the halls of Washington on the issues that impact how we connect and communicate. And so this is a core issue to us. We've certainly tracked at length the digital divide, and in particular, the racial and ethnic digital divide. And we see that census data clearly shows there is an adoption gap. Latinos far less likely to be connected to an adequate internet connection. And but what I mean by that, and I'm going to define it for y'all because I'm going to use that term a few times here, is that they either have no internet at all or that they're solely reliant on a mobile connection, which no shade to mobile, T-Mobile, but I think it's an important distinction because as we work from home and as many of us school our children from home, access healthcare, we know that the mobile connection is not adequate for the needs of today, at least not at this point. So the Latino community is far less likely than white people to have an adequate internet connection. 30% of Latinos and Black folks, 34% of Native Americans do not have access to an adequate internet connection compared to 21%. So what that means is 18 million Latinos, 13 million Black folks, and 13 million Indigenous people do not have an adequate connection to the internet. And we all don't need to imagine too much what that means for people's lives right now. I'm a former school teacher, and I'm still in touch with a lot of my friends who are still teaching in low-income neighborhoods. It's nearly impossible to do their job. It's just incredibly cool. So that's my first point. That's just some basic data about where we are. And I have three main points related to that data. And the first one is this: There's a lot of talk about rural. The rural divide is real. However, the adoption gap, in other words, people who can afford, who have access to internet in their home but can't afford to take it, the adoption gap is a far bigger problem than the deployment gap with broadband. More than 77 million people in the US lack an adequate connection, and the income-related broadband gap persisted through Trump's reign and all the deregulation that happened under that administration. Only 48% of low-income households have a fixed broadband connection, cost being cited as one of the major reasons. So the vast majority of Latinos who lack adequate connections lack them not because the lines aren't running past their house, but because the internet is just too darn expensive. So I think we can all agree, and Alejandro's setup led us to this, nobody should be without internet access. This is a public policy failure. And over the past year, as we've looked for jobs, schooled our kids, and access healthcare, it's never been clearer that we need to fix it. We need an aggressive agenda for that. And I'll lay that out right towards the end. But before I do that, I just want to say, we have some great corporate allies here. When we can work together, we should. But internet service providers themselves alone, not through charity, nor through public policy, will solve this problem for us. We have had some successes in the past couple of years under the Trump administration. We worked together to pass the emergency broadband benefit in the stimulus package that passed in December. That was an important step to making sure that low-income folks have access to the internet. We opposed grave cuts to the Lifeline program, which subsidizes phone and internet service for poor folks. But industry alone cannot be our guide. And I do want to give just a couple of examples of why. Industry-driven policy got us the Sprint T-Mobile merger, which was followed by and certainly produced the largest wireless service price increase in US history. And that was measured by the Bureau of Labor Statistics Wireless Services Price Index. Comcast and other broadband behemoths here and beyond here led the charge against the FCC, even having the authority to protect consumers from abusive corporate practices in the broadband industry. And through the FCC's Rural Digital Opportunities Fund, Charter recently received $9.4 million to build out rural broadband to an almost exclusively white area in Western Massachusetts, to towns that have nearly completed or will soon complete building their own fiber. They're not alone, okay? This isn't like, I'm not picking on Charter, or at least I'm not trying to. Elon Musk got hundreds of millions of dollars to build broadband to parking lots and luxury resorts that already had access to the internet. So every dollar we waste on projects like these are dollars that could be going to close the affordability gap in the poorest communities. So my affirmative point is this: we need a visionary agenda to end the digital divide for good. We should be able to do this by 2024. It's not that hard. It actually just takes some courageous public policy making. We need taxpayer-funded investment in adoption. The current program, the USO program, is better than nothing, but it charges ratepayers, and it's a regressive tax where a lot of poor folks are actually paying in. And so we need actual treasury funds to invest in broadband adoption, much like what we did with the emergency broadband benefit that I'm very happy to have worked with the industry on. We need regulation, we need oversight, and we need strong competition policy. The FCC has to have authority to oversee this market. It's critically important, not just for affordability, not just for net neutrality, which are important issues for free press, but also to make sure that we have a reliable network. Free press has studied at length the communications crisis in Puerto Rico following Hurricane Maria. And we know that the FCC's lack of ability to exercise oversight in rehabilitating that system and building back a better system is critically important. We need to stop mergers. They drive up prices and reduce options. So if you go to freepress.net, you will see that we have a comprehensive policy agenda that we're pushing now in 2021 to end the digital divide for good. And I'm just so pleased to be here. And now that I've picked on my corporate compañeras a bit, I'll turn it back over to them.
No, thank you, Jessica. You really have given us a lot to think about and to consider. And I think what's clear is that, that the digital divide really is a multidimensional problem that impacts every aspect of our lives. I think what I find exciting about this moment is that together, by speaking up, we have the ability to not only correct the problems that we are experiencing today, but we really have the ability to shape the future that we want to live in. Jackie, you have also been a longtime advocate for expanding digital opportunity to every home, regardless of age, gender, immigration status, orientation, or ability, but you've done so through your work with Comcast, NBC Universal, and Telemundo. COVID-19 has tested the resiliency of our telecommunications networks, and from your vantage point, do you mind sharing how our broadband infrastructure fared in comparison to other parts of the world? And how has Comcast been able to meet the moment to help ensure that every home has the possibility of a digital connection?
Thank you so much, Alejandro. And thank you to my co-panelists here. This is a great panel. I love to see the smart women that are working hard and thinking about these issues every day. And I'm very appreciative of LULAC, not only for reconvening us here again during this crazy time when we're having virtual conferences and virtual panels, but really helping to bring different viewpoints together and allow us to have a really important discussion. And before I jump into your question, I'll just say we can probably wrap this panel up pretty quickly because there are many things that Jessica just spoke to that I am in complete agreement with. And that may be very historic here for us in 2021, a year when almost anything seems possible. But I'll start by saying, the preface of this conversation was that it is a dark and terrible time, right? And it's so important that we have, especially with COVID-19 pandemic and the need for us to be safe and at home, physically distancing and social distancing, and really relying on technology for telework and for distance learning, as well as entertainment and personal growth, right? I think what's really important is that the networks in this country have stood up very well to the increased demand. And you just think about kind of this spike curve of everyone going from being in an office, children being in schools, people going to libraries, using that community infrastructure that exists for broadband. And when people had to go home and they turned on their mobile devices to Wi-Fi and Chromebooks and laptops and TVs all simultaneously, the networks in this country held up incredibly well. And I say that, my father's an immigrant and most of my family is overseas, and our family will say, are you having the, outages and the lagging and the problems that we're having in Europe? And I'll say that's definitely not the case here. If you think of how many more devices and how much more time people are spending on their devices at home, it's an incredible story about how our country and how our industry has been able to immediately get to work to reinvest in the infrastructure that's necessary to support this huge, ecosystem of people being online. That's not to say that everything is perfect, right? And I think we've all known about the digital divide, and we've had great panels here with LULAC discussing this, and we've worked with LULAC councils across the country. I've done it for over 10 years, closing the digital divide, and we know that this is something that is not easily done, and it's not quickly won. This is something that takes time and real boots on the ground, blood, sweat, and tears to make sure that we can get every last family in this country connected. And so I think we've seen several really important, movements and symbols from industry that they are stepping up to try and help solve this crisis, right? This pandemic, first we thought it was going to be very short term, then the summer got enveloped in it, and then we saw the winter, and now we're going into year 2 of this, and there's no real end in sight. So how we are coming together to try and solve this question is really important. And Comcast, like other ISPs and providers here, we did several things immediately. We agreed not to shut off people's connectivity if they were not able to pay. We helped people find packages that were more affordable for them, right? We increased 60 days free internet to new Internet Essentials customers. And we really doubled down on our Internet Essentials program, which, you know, I don't want to say I've been doing this for as long as I've been doing this, but Internet Essentials is turning 10 years old, right? And I remember when I first met Jessica, when we were first rolling out Internet Essentials, and I was telling community partners about this, it would be $9.95 a month, no contract for high-speed internet in the home. We would offer digital literacy training and hardware, because we know it's not just cost. There's a hardware component, there's a digital skills and relevance component to this as well. And so we were working to try and figure out how this would happen. And there were a lot of naysayers, people who said, when are you going to raise the price of it? 10 years later, we have not raised the price of it. When are you going to make it available for seniors, for veterans, for people in public housing? These are all adjustments that we've made over 10 years to expand the program, to make more people eligible for it, and to find different ways to connect into community and help people get online. And so here we are 10 years later. You know, there's always criticism. There will always be criticism. We are doing important work now to increase the speed so that more devices and more members of the family can be online utilizing that high-speed broadband connection at home. We're creating unlimited data for our Internet Essentials customers. We know that low-income people are the least able to go and telework. You know, I work for Comcast. I'm able to work from home, but if I was in a services job, I would not be working from home every day. You have to go out of the house to do that. And so we're working now to make sure that there's more opportunities for people to use that, you know, data to find jobs, to do more things to help their income. And then we're uplifting what we call lift zones. And this is the wonderful LULAC Technology Center model, where we are reinvesting and doubling down in physical locations, co-working spaces that are safe for people to go. And we see this with children now that can't be at home alone during the day, right? If they have a parent that works outside of the home, a Latino family, where maybe parents are working multiple jobs, right? Children need a safe place to go where it's not just COVID friendly, but there is safe technology and safe connectivity for them to be able to do their distance learning, so we can work on that homework gap. And so we're investing in these lift zones that are really stepping in to try and help fill this void. And, you know, one thing we've learned in 10 years that's so important is that it's not something we're going to solve alone. And Jessica said this beautifully, right? So we could end the panel right now. You know, this is not something the industry can solve alone. Federal policy won't solve this alone. Nonprofit partners and charitable organizations can't solve this alone. This is a place where we all have to come together and really figure out how we can help connect that additional family. We've brought 15 million people online, low-income Americans online with Internet Essentials, but looking across the board, there are so many more to reach. And so our ability to help bring families online and to help give them the opportunities is really something that we have an obligation to collaborate on to make happen.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And I want to just flag two things for all of our kind of LULAC councils tuning in across the country. Number one, Internet Essentials, right? That's a low cost, affordable option that I think some people don't know about, that's available across the Comcast footprint. And I think the announcement that Comcast made earlier this month, which is about the Comcast lift zones. So for all of those kind of LULAC councils that have a vision for a community space where, you know, people can congregate and come together safely, and right now to help kind of mitigate that digital connection barrier, this is the perfect opportunity to learn more about that project and work with the LULAC National Office, or I think there's an online portal that people can get more information about. But tune in and let's make these lift zones possible across the country.
Thanks, Alejandro.
Yeah, of course. So I'd also like to welcome Laura into the conversation. So Laura, as we have heard, broadband access at this point is completely linked to our health and our ability to engage with the world and to each other. And this is especially true for the Latino community, Black communities, the indigenous communities of color, as well as rural and low-income households or families, right? So this year, the FCC launched a $20 billion Rural Digital Opportunity Fund to expand broadband deployment in rural parts of the country, which represents one of the most focused investments of taxpayer dollars ever made to help bridge the gap across rural America. Do you mind sharing with us some of the work the Charter is leading to ensure that we are expanding our broadband infrastructure to historically underserved communities?
Sure, thank you, Alejandro. And good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to be here with all of you today. Thank you, Jessica and Jackie, for your comments. Can y'all hear me still? So thank you to LULAC also for always thinking of Charter and for including us in this important discussion today. As Alejandro mentioned, my name is Laura Berrocal, and I work with Charter's Government Affairs team in Washington, D.C. As a leading broadband provider, the issue of access and affordability are key priorities for Charter, right? We serve some of the country's most diverse communities. We provide TV, broadband, voice, mobile services, and it's all delivered through our Spectrum brand. And during the pandemic, similar to Jackie's comments, we've been laser focused on keeping communities connected. And we've rolled out several new initiatives to support families, students, teachers, and schools to get online. We all know that home broadband connectivity is essential, and it's the technology gap that's unfortunately most prevalent within the Latino community. And this is a problem, especially in this current COVID environment that we find ourselves in. So we really do need to tackle this issue from all angles. And I think that's exactly what companies like Charter are trying to do, as well as many other industry players. Charter signed on to the FCC's Keep Americans Connected pledge, which prompted the rollout of our remote education offer, which rolled out in March of last year. And through this program, we've connected nearly 450,000 students, teachers, and families to high-speed internet for 60 days at no cost. Speeds were 100 megabits to 200 megabits. So it was a really good opportunity to make sure that we were keeping people connected during a really challenging time. We also continue to offer our Spectrum Internet Assist program. And this is actually Charter's low-cost broadband program that's available to eligible families as well as seniors. And we provide this program, we make it available across our 41 state footprint. And one thing that I think is really important to note is we've been working directly with schools and school districts across our footprint to support them in offering high-speed home broadband internet to students, teachers, and staff. And this internet connectivity is being delivered directly in their homes. And this is something that we're doing through our Stay Connected K through 12 program. And it's a really innovative solution to help get more households connected, because it actually gives the schools and the school districts the flexibility to add students to the program when needed. So we've been very intentional about ensuring communities are connected during this pandemic. And Alejandro, to your point, broadband deployment and access is another really important component to Charter's digital inclusion priorities. Expanding our network to more unserved households and businesses is really important. It's a huge priority. Broadband, actually the Commission's report, the broadband report that they issued last year, tells us that 14.5 million Americans still have no access to high-speed broadband. 11 million of those individuals live in rural areas. So there are still access challenges that need to be addressed. And I'm really happy to see our company stepping up to address these challenges head on. And this month, we actually announced the launch of our multi-year, multi-billion-dollar broadband build-out initiative that will deliver gigabit high-speed broadband to 1 million unserved customer locations. And many of these locations include rural areas. So we expect to invest approximately $5 billion to support this build out that's going to happen across 24 states. And this private investment is offset by a little over 1 billion, 1.2 billion to be exact, in support that we won from the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. And this is an effort that was introduced by the Commission last year as a way to bring digital opportunity to Americans that were living on the wrong side of the digital divide. And we're really excited about this public-private partnership and opportunity to expand broadband access to more unserved communities. I'm really pleased to be able to share the update with you all today. And it's a critical step towards fostering greater digital inclusion. And I look forward to having more conversation about this during our conversation today. So thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Laura. And again, I'll just flag Spectrum Internet Assist. I'm actually going to, HCTP put together a blog post that basically consolidated all of the low-cost programs that are available right now. So I'm going to pin that on Twitter. So please go to follow HCTP at HCTP_policy so that you guys have access to all of those resources across the country. And you can see what type of programs are already in place to help ensure that everybody has at least the ability to get connected to a low-cost option. So, Joanna, I want to kind of turn it over to you. So achieving the goal of full digital inclusion and universal broadband adoption really will take a collaborative and integrated approach with policymakers, private industry, and in partnership with local communities. And by local communities, I mean me and all the people that are tuning in today. The LULAC community is known for their commitment to promoting policy solutions that address and redress the structural inequalities embedded in all aspects of American life. And so I really just, I think that T-Mobile, as the end carrier, has become synonymous with a unique customer commitment to develop innovative products that serve historically disconnected communities. So Sprint, for example, focused on providing affordable and reliable wireless connection for our nation's service members. And T-Mobile was one of the first national carriers to include international calling as a part of your unlimited plans. I remember my mom was very excited about that, but now we wouldn't have to spend tons of money to connect with our grandma in Mexico City. And now that both of those companies have come together under the T-Mobile umbrella, do you mind sharing how you are continuing to carry those organizational values into the future?
Yes, absolutely. I'm so glad to hear your mom was excited about that, by the way. I love to hear that. But you're right, Alejandro. And by the way, thank you for having us today. And thank you, LULAC, for including us in this. And I'm very glad to be joined by a wonderful panel of Latina leaders. So, but as we're saying, T-Mobile has really has, in their DNA, inclusivity and diversity, really from the beginning of everything that they did. Just like America wouldn't be what it is without the Hispanic community, the Un-carrier wouldn't be what it is without our Hispanic employees and our Hispanic customers. And the Hispanic community is such a big part of our customer base. We are actually the most diverse wireless company in the nation. And we are a recognized best employer for diversity and Latinos. And the numbers really speak for themselves. Just internally in the employee base, 59% of our employees are people of color, and over 40% are women. So a lot of our employees look a lot like me. And while those are really good things, and we have done really great things, we also know that we can do better. And so one of the things that we have made a part of our equity and action work was to really strive for commitments and goals that we're going to help advance our background in diversity, equity, inclusion, and really move forward with it. And so we have 54 commitments that we made in this equity and action work. And one of those commitments is to, really create a real pipeline to diverse leadership inside the company. So that means, creating that pathway for people of color and diverse employees to be, trained to be executives in the company. Another thing that we're doing, and also part of that equity and action work, is investing in the communities that we serve and that are loyal to us as customers. We are investing in things like workforce development. We're investing in really major digital literacy programs. And we're doing this all with the help of partners like LULAC. Cindy Benavides has been a part of this work from the very, very beginning. She also serves on our External Diversity and Inclusion Council, along with other Latino and Latino leaders like Janet Murguia of Unidos, and we also have Gil Casillas, who's just a powerhouse in the Latino community. So they're helping us think through these investments to thoughtfully invest in these communities and be inclusive and really help, with programs that are needed, like digital literacy. So we have a lot of things that we're working on with them, but that's just a part of the work that we're doing there. The other thing I do want to mention, by the way, as we talk about, you talk about your mom, being excited about the plans, and there are so many things we do that we take in consideration with our customer base. We have Mobile Without Borders. Customers were paying extra when they were going to Canada and Mexico. We eliminated high-speed data roaming charges and added unlimited talk and text roaming. We also introduced Simple Global, offering customers unlimited data with 2G speeds and texting in 210 plus countries, excuse me. And we also are creating free programs like Scam Shield. So right now we know that Latinos in particular are being targeted for scams. Everything is done online. And especially when English is not your first language, you become a bigger target. And so we're seeing scams in really, really important things like, people applying for PPP loans, people getting information about vaccinations and so much more. And so with our Scam Shield technology, customers are no longer defenseless against these kinds of attacks. We help those unwanted robocalls. This is a free service that you can utilize if you're a T-Mobile customer. These scams have cost Americans over $10 billion a year. And it was one of the #1 complaints that the FCC received in 2019. So we really do take our customer base in account, and we are always thinking of inclusivity and diversity in really everything we do.
Thank you. And I actually want to, T-Mobile also announced in 2020, I think, your Project 10 Million, right? To kind of help close the homework gap. Do you want to share a little bit about that program?
Yeah, absolutely. So Project 10 Million, it was great. So we announced it back actually in 2019, and we launched it early in 2020. We sped it up to accommodate the pandemic, because obviously the homework gap was already an issue before 2020. But when the pandemic hit, we really sprung into action to try to keep Americans connected. By the way, we also participated in the Keeping Americans Connected pledge. And last year we sped up several programs that we were working, we had planned, but we sped them up to accommodate the pandemic. So Project 10 Million offers school districts free internet access and mobile hotspots for 10 million eligible households in the United States. So if you're on the National School Lunch program, you are eligible to receive Project 10 Million. It's facilitated through the school districts, and we provide students with a hotspot and low-cost devices. It is at no cost to the family or to the child, and it's a free service. This is a $10.7 billion investment. And so this is going to we know this is going to go a long way, especially right now when kids are learning online. This is really the only way that you can get connected in school. So we're really, really excited about Project 10 Million. And honestly, it just makes me so proud to work for T-Mobile. Amazing, amazing program.
I remember seeing the rollout of that, and it was just incredible that you guys did that. And so I think that today we're speaking directly to LULAC members across the country, and LULAC has a long history of being committed advocates, right, to promoting inclusive public policies to as a way of addressing and redressing kind of structural inequalities, right, that really have limited, I think, the opportunity for Latino communities across the country. So I think I want to, with that in mind, I'd like to pose the next question to the entire panel. So from your perspective, what are some specific actions that LULAC members can take to Congress, to encourage Congress or federal regulators or broadband providers to deliver real solutions for diverse communities across the country? And Jessica, if you wouldn't mind kind of kicking us off, I know that you do a lot of this work and would love to have your thoughts on this.
Thanks, Alejandro. I mean, first, I'd just like to say public policy is an incredibly important tool. And our community, for many years was excluded from the halls of Congress as these things were being discussed. So I would love to invite everyone to join us at freepress.net. We partner with LULAC on a regular basis, but we are solely focused on making sure that communications and media systems work for people and people first. And so we have an aggressive broadband agenda in Congress and at the Federal Communications Commission this year. We continue to believe that we need $140 billion dedicated to closing the adoption gap. You could check out our agenda for that has more details at righttoconnect.com. And on the FCC front, something really critically terrible, frankly, happened under the Trump administration. I know we're all shocked. Like every piece of public policy that was a disaster under the Trump administration, the broadband policy at the commission was also just frankly a mess. The Trump FCC actually forfeited its own authority to oversee and make sure that broadband users have basic consumer protections. So this is a fight for net neutrality, for the FCC's authority under Title II of the Communications Act to protect consumers, to make sure that we have reliable connections, affordable connections, and so that we can do better public policy to close the digital divide for good by 2024. There's no reason. We do not need to have a digital divide. The programs that were mentioned here, I think are important. I'm glad they exist. And it's critically important that the commission has the authority to protect consumers and expand broadband access under FCC rules.
Yeah, thank you for that. Jackie, any
Yes.
thoughts?
I raise my hand because I'm still programmed to raise my hand when I have a comment or question. But I will say something that Jessica alluded to that's so important right now is the emergency broadband benefit, right? And LULAC has this incredible track record of mobilizing their LULAC councils and leaders to weigh in rulemakings and policy that is critical for keeping our communications infrastructure and national programs moving forward. And one of the great programs that I'm so proud to have worked with, women at this table and in Washington on is the emergency broadband benefit, which is an opportunity to give families $50 credit, right? They're working out the details right now, but in principle, it's up to $50 to choose the telecommunications service that works best for them, to choose the broadband service that works best for them. And as we've worked on Internet Essentials for over 10 years now, we realize that choice is critical, that people can choose the services that work best for their family. And that, right now, given the pandemic, that there is no time like the present or yesterday to get these services connected. So there's a rulemaking happening at the FCC right now that closes on February 16th, where people can send in comments, reply comments, and talk about how to get this program working as quickly as possible. And one of the really important elements that we're working on right now, and we're working with Jessica and others on this, is to make sure that undocumented families, people who truly need access to these services, have the opportunity to get them. And there's a lot of onerous regulation and pieces that go into how they manage these programs, and a lot of details, right? But right now, what's important is that existing programs like Internet Essentials, like Internet Assist, right? Many providers have different programs that they can be, grandfathered, I hate that term, but that they can be, allowed to participate in this program as quickly as possible, so that when the program becomes available, it's a limited amount of money that's available for families, but that when monies become available for people to access this benefit, the Latino community is at the table and able to take advantage of this program from day one. And I think, this is going to be the step one in terms of how we look at, services for broadband products going forward. I know there are legislative proposals out there to create similar benefits to help people get broadband. But as we think of as a country about who needs these services, right? Jessica gave us some great facts about who is not connected today, right? If you're a Latino family, if you're a Spanish dominant family, your odds of being on the wrong side of the digital divide are so much more. If you're advocating for those families, it's critical that we get this benefit out to as many people as possible, and that they're taking into consideration that there are mixed status families. Not everybody has a social security number, right? These are things that we want the policy to take account for, so that we can bring as many families into this program, many individuals into this program, many Latinos into this program as possible. And that's one area. And I think we can talk through so many things, but this is happening now. And this is something where the rule will be made, end of February. It's not even a leap year. We get the extra day. It's going to happen before March. And we really need to make sure that families know that this is available and that people know to sign up the same way we tell them to sign up for Lifeline. And I'll digress for one more second. With all these programs that are out there, right? There are so many programs from industry, from communities, right, that are out there. And no, they're never enough, right? Nothing is enough here. The take rate on these programs is incredibly low if people don't know about them. And with the Spanish-speaking, Hispanic community, Spanish-speaking community, there is a cultural barrier that exists, a linguistic barrier that exists, and our obligation to inform consumers that these programs exist and that they can take advantage of them is critical. And so I would ask, LULAC advocates, I know the women of LULAC around the country that are organizing every bake sale, they're organizing every fundraiser, they're putting, scholarships together for students every day. This is another great thing that you can do to help make sure that individuals get connected on that family local level, because people are more receptive to this when they hear it from a trusted friend, partner, relative, church, goer, than when they hear it from a corporation. That's kind of terrifying, or somebody in Washington who's not connected to what they're going through every day in their lives.
And for everybody watching, we also filed comments to the FCC doing just that, advocating for the FCC to expand its eligibility requirements to ensure that our communities and mixed status families are able to take advantage of this benefit. And also that's all available for you guys if you want to visit httppolicy.com. There's a blog post up with our comments. And while you're there, sign up for our newsletter. We're going to keep you posted once that benefit goes live, so that you guys are the first to hear about it and can ensure that our communities on the ground are able to take advantage of this important benefit. And I think Jessica had some comments to add about the emergency broadband benefit.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me rudely interrupt. It's always so difficult in these digital settings where we can't all see each other's body language. I think that's an incredibly important point that Jackie just made. The emergency broadband benefit, we worked to get that legislation passed and move that money in Congress so that we could actually start getting through the logistics at the FCC. And I expect we're in pretty good shape on that front, and agree that outreach and notification to folks is important. I will just say one thing I'm worried about is we all know right now during the pandemic, it's never been clearer that the inequality of different kinds of access, or even no access to broadband. The emergency broadband benefit is just that. It's for this emergency, and it will not last beyond then. And so I think it's critically important. We supported it wholeheartedly, and we really got to be talking about how are we going to connect poor folks in the long term, because this is
the money runs out.
The money will run out, and so this is not the long-term vehicle. And we have to be talking about money from the U.S. Treasury, because the Universal Service Fund which also funds Lifeline at a $9.95 per month rate. That's not enough for the kind of connections that our families need. And it's a regressive tax system that actually, you know, because the take rate is so low on Lifeline, meaning the number of people who qualify, the vast majority of people who qualify for Lifeline don't take the program, and they're actually paying into the fund. So we gotta kind of flip this a bit. And so I hope we can continue to talk long-term about solutions, because all of us know that the digital divide wasn't just a crisis come last March. It's been a crisis for a long time. It's resulting in educational inequities and more. And so we got to really be in this for the long haul. Thank you for letting me get in.
Yeah, and if I could just get in here too, because I think you raised a great point, Jessica, related to Lifeline, because I think Lifeline is a program that really should be on people's radars in the coming months. We really hope to see Congress, the Commission, as well as industry experts and community groups to be able to work together to establish a strong framework to reform Lifeline, hopefully in a way that ensures that all eligible households get and stay connected. This is definitely a place for LULAC members to plug in. I think this program, you know, from Charter's standpoint, really needs to be revamped and modernized to address today's connectivity needs, and that really includes access to reliable high-speed broadband as well. So I think that those are areas that we are going to see more traction on this year, and certainly things that the LULAC network should have front and center when they're thinking about policy priorities for broadband.
Wonderful. Joanna?
Yeah, I'll just quickly add on to what we were talking about EBB. I mean, I think LULAC members have a great opportunity here to champion such a great program like EBB. And I think sometimes we forget how powerful we are as Latinos. And just because the election is over, there's no need to forget that in 2020 that there were 32 million eligible Latinos in the United States. I mean, to not yield that power, to not really take full advantage of that power is such a waste for us. And so, we don't just have to have that mindset during an election year. I mean, we are campaigning and fighting for, advocating for things every day, all day long in our community. So I just think that's a great reminder. And I think EBB is great. And, we have an opportunity to structure it right now, right? And so to comment and to be a part of that process. So I just wanted to add that as well.
Wonderful, thank you so much. So it looks like we're just about out of time. So I want to just thank LULAC again for having us today, and to our panelists, please make sure to check out Free Press, make sure to check out Comcast, Internet Essentials, make sure to check out Project 10 Million from T-Mobile, make sure to check out everything that Charter is doing with their Spectrum programs. I think this has been a great conversation, and hopefully we can this is an issue that is top of mind for all of us, and that it will take all of us to really expand digital opportunity across our country. So to everyone tuning in from home, please make sure to follow at @ATTP_policy on Twitter and Instagram to help continue today's dialogue. Please also use the hashtag State of Latino America. And just remember, until next time, remember to tune into the conversation, speak out, and stay connected, because the future needs our help. Until next time, have a good one.
Thanks, Alejandro.
Thank you.